Hello, this is the Montreal Anglo Angler, and I'm making this little video in response to a lot of questions from those I know about how I catch large catfish. This way is not the only way. There's many others, but this is the system that I've evolved over a couple of years, which I use to consistently catch large channel cats and some other larger species as well. But I'm here in this video just to introduce you to the equipment I use, and I hope to make another video on the riverbank to show this this particular rig in action. So first of all, I want to introduce you to some of the items that I use. The first and foremost item which I've developed, if that can be said of it, such a thing as this. It's a very simple, very gnarly system which is used to weigh the fishing rig down. I was finding that the lead weights were proving problematic for several reasons. First and foremost, they're made of lead generally, and not only does that create a certain environmental impact, but it costs a fair bit of money if you frequently lose them to breakages or snagging them on weeds and rocks in the river, which is a pretty common occurrence. So I did a lot of hunting, and I finally came up with, or finally discovered, a system of using cement. And although this is not true to the original recipe, this is one that I've developed which works absolutely great on the Prairies River right by my home here. So this is what I've affectionately nicknamed the Catfish Bollock. Really simple to make. I'm going to produce another video showing in more detail how I make them, but it quite simply is cement cast in a regular dollar store ice cube tray, and before the cement sets I embed a size 2 safety pin in it. That makes a nice simple arrangement for attaching to the rig, and there's many reasons why this is superior to lead in my opinion. One of those is that the square shape inherent of using an ice cube tray stops it from rolling and tumbling in the current, which is a problem you get with egg sinkers and with the pear-shaped dipsy sinkers. Secondly, just the cement block fully dried and cured is pretty solid, and it also weighs about 1.5 ounces just by itself, so that's a substantial lead sinker, and it's not a huge amount larger than a lead sinker of equivalent weight. The other thing is, because it's porous, I didn't really extract the air from this one. This weight will soak up its own volume in water almost as well, and that adds to the weight and helps to bed your rig on the bottom of the river or a lake bed if you're using it in such. So that's the Bollock, which I use almost 9 times out of 10 on this rig, unless I've either run out of them, or for example I have some weights and I know I'm not going to snag, but that's a rare occurrence. I usually use these all the time on my catfish rigs, and that's what this rig specifically is that I'm going to show you today. Other items, I'm going to start with the most crucial. There's going to be circle hooks. These are the ones I always come back to. I've got some cheap ones I bought off Amazon, which are okay, but the important difference is these are inline circle hooks. That means that if you look at one end on, the point and the shank line up in a dead straight line, and because of the way I rig the bait on these, it's really important to have an inline one. An offset one where the tip is bent out slightly works in some applications, but it doesn't seem to work in this one because it's only a 50-50 chance of hooking the fish correctly. So that's the hook, people laugh at me for using such a small one as a 3-0, but circle hooks, remember, they're much smaller. And a 3-0 or 3/0 circle hook is a pretty large one. I do sometimes scale up to a 6/0 if I think there's some big catfish around. But this is my go-to size, and apart from the actual design, an inline circle hook, you don't have to stay true to mustard. But I found these ones are really consistent. They can catch anything up to 10 fish in a row without bending or blunting, and that's saying quite something. So that's the hook, a 3/0 inline circle hook, which is crucial to the way I rig my lures. Also for this rig, you have these little eagle claw swivels with snap. This is just to make life easier. They can be any size and weight, but I tend to keep them on the small side. The breaking strain on them, the test strength, could be anything as low as 4 pounds. And it doesn't really matter, because all they've got to do is to be strong enough to hang on to your bollock or your weight long enough to get it cast into the river and to hold it in the current, because it doesn't matter once you've hooked a fish if this breaks away. And that's another part of the genius part of this rig. So a swivel with a snap. It doesn't have to be a ball bearing, it can be a cheapo swivel. One of the most crucial components as well are these 3-way swivels. I don't recommend the ones that are shaped like a Y. Try to get the T-shaped ones. And basically for dimensions, you don't really need anything heavier test rated than your main line or your leader line at the worst case. This one I think is rated up to around 40 pounds, huge overkill, but again I got these in a deal. They're super cheap and they hold up to being pulled every which way by a 5-pound catfish, so they're perfectly good for this job. So that's your 3-way swivel. Ball bearing one is better. They will outlast those cheap wire ones by many times. Not last and not least, this is your leader line, and because of the way I rig the hooks, I use mono. You can use anything from your regular mainline strength, anything up to 20, 30, 40 pound test. This is 20 pound, it's just what I have lying around. It's a very good bog standard cheap mono fishing line. I don't recommend fluorocarbon because it seems to kink out of shape and the rigs tend to fall to pieces, especially the way I make them. And in storage, I don't know why, but the fluorocarbon seems to have too much of a memory. So when you straighten out your rig, it gets very messy. For line, you also need your weight line. Now you can use the regular mono or your mainline material. I don't recommend that, and that's simply because this cement bollock is what I regard as a disposable part of the outfit. It's not as serious as if you're losing a lead weight. Your lead weights, A, cost you money, a lot more money than this, that is, and they also pollute the environment really badly, so it's not really the best thing to be leaving on the riverbed, especially if you lose a lot of them to snags. Whereas these, it's just a rock, and in my experience it's never spooked the fish having a little cement block attached to the line. They're more concerned with getting their teeth around the bait and then breaking away. So the reason for this only 4-pound line is it's just strong enough to hang on to that bollock and hang it onto the rig, enough to cast it out and then hold it on the bottom. And if it's not important to you that you might lose the whole rig, then you can just use your main line or your leader material. Last but not least in this little setup is something I consider more or less essential, and that's a index card. Now for making them the way I do, you'll need a 3" by 5" index card. Color not important, lines again not important, just something that's easy to cut and write on. 3 by 5. That's literally all your criteria there. And then the final thing, which I've tried many different options for, found these to be the most straightforward, is a collector card storage sheet. This is one that fits in a letter binder. Doesn't have to be. You can use little Ziploc baggies from the craft store, from a dollar store, as long as they fit exactly half of a 3 by 5 index card, and we'll see why when we come to tying the rig. So for me, the most critical step is making and tying my leader to the hook, because that's really the link with the fish. If that fails, then you may as well give up right away. So what I do is I'll take a nice 12", anything 12 to 15" of the mono, the strong stuff. This is the 20-pound mono, which is going to be my leader material. Just cut that off. Now, a knotless knot is by far the easiest and quickest way to tie one of these, and it stays done up as long as you're careful with your knot tying. So you literally are going to take the eye of the hook and punch that mono leader through to the back of the hook. There, just hold that little tag end against the hook with the finger and thumb. Take the other hand and we're going to wrap around that leader material. And you have to cut the leader off. You can't just start this knot from a spool, because you're going to run into a problem at the next step. So we're just going to wrap around there. I usually do 12 times for luck. 13th time I wrap around the actual shank. And then you're just going to take the leader and go back through the eye of the hook. So there you've got a nicely cinched up knot. You can put a bit of pressure on there. Watch out for the barb on those circle hooks. They're absolutely savage on these. Some people recommend to straighten the barb out, but you're going to probably lose 3 out of 4 of your catfish if you do that. So that's the hook end is on. Then what I'll do is I'll take the other end, and for this I usually use like a modified blood knot to tie onto the T-arm of my swivel. So 3-way swivel, we're just going to loop around on itself. We're going to pull that around, keep the loop tight. 2, 3, 4, 5 turns around. And when you're working, as I am, in the office with clean new material, you can wet this in your mouth. I'll spare you that detail. And once you've moistened the knot, you can cinch it down. That's not actually a very good example, but you should always pull test them to a pretty good weight. So you've now got a hook attached to your 3-way swivel. The next step is to take your thin line, your breakaway line, and try to get a piece about the same length as your mono. Doesn't have to be exact, but the ultimate aim is to get that the same size as your heavy mono. So first things first, we attach that to our little cheapo swivel. Found these at the dollar store for about $1.25, I think, and at that $1.25 for 7 of these, not too bad. And you don't have to make a beautiful knot here. Kind of defeats the object, as long as your bollock doesn't go sailing away and smack a boater as they're going by, or you don't lose a whole load of tackle, that's fine. As long as that knot holds. There you go. It doesn't have a big tag end either. So now the next step, I try to tie this weight line so as to get it about the same length as my hook. So I usually pull that through until both of them are roughly the same length. Then I'll tie my modified blood knot again. I don't even know if that is the correct name. I think it's kind of like a half-assed trilene knot. But this one, I've never had the knot fail on me. It's always the line or the tackle that breaks. So you go around about 6 times with this light line. You can do more if you want, but really doesn't achieve anything. And then for this, because strength isn't crucial, I pull the leader through instead of cinching it up nicely. So that leaves me with a weight and a hook on the line, roughly the same length. So what you got is a 3-way swivel now, and the untied end is going to go on your main line or onto a swivel which is already tied to your main line. To save time, I'm not going to cut off the tag ends here. I'm going to go straight onto the next stage, which is packing this lure, sorry, this rig. For that you're going to need your cue card, and it doesn't get much simpler than this. Just fold your cue card, your index card, in half. If you have lines, it's very helpful because you're just going to cut out a little notch in each side, and your lines help you to line that up. This is not an exact science, please don't worry yourself over this. And then just a little note. Okay, PN, paternoster, 3 knots. Okay, that is literally it. Just enough to tell me what size of hook I got on the end there and what type of rig. I use these pink ones to represent bait. So your next step, put your hook with the tag end trimmed, please, in between the 2 leaves. Bring your lead around the back and then start winding it around. There you go. You don't want your swivel or your snap to be literally hanging over the end. Just pinch that up together with your finger and thumb. And you're going to need your index card or your collector card wallet. Just slip it inside, and you can do that for up to 9 ready-made rigs. These wallets are pretty good, they stand up to everything, and your hook points are all hidden inside this card anyway. You don't have to worry about those breaking out. The other thing is you can just fold this over on itself, and it keeps everything nice and neat till you get to the bank, and then you can literally hang it up in front of you. You can do pretty much whatever you want. So the next step is when you get to the bank. I'm only going to go through part of this because I don't intend to mess up my office with my fresh bait, and I want to show how this casts out on the riverbank. But the genius of this idea is how quick and easy it is when you get to the riverbank to get set up, because you just have to slip it out of your wallet. You choose the size you want based on A, what bait you've got, and B, what size of fish you think you're going to target, which is something you have to think about beforehand. And then you just tear this down the middle and your rig drops out. It looks more tangled than it is because I'm tangling up with my demonstrator line and we're getting in a mess here. But this rig is tangle free. It doesn't have too much kinking in it from the memory of the material, and it's ready to roll. I literally get my weight line, snap, and this saves tying a bunch of little knots in fiddly 4-pound test nylon. Just clip on my weight there. Okay, so that's your weight. The premise is really simple. The weight helps get your cast way out, and it holds it in fast moving water, whereas your hook and whatever bait you've chosen to attach to it is floating in the current side to side, tempting the fish. This inconspicuous little block of concrete is sitting on the floor and minding its own business. The fish doesn't get spooked, and you've got a fantastic setup which for some reason doesn't seem to scare the fish at all. I've never had a case where I've been fishing all day and never caught anything with this rig. The beauty is that you can keep the same rough size like this of weight, and you can go up or down quite a few sizes of the hooks. Like I use number 2s with a piece of worm. It doesn't require any attaching, you just push the worm on the hook, and that works great for smallmouth bass, pike and other more less discerning fish that are out there. And for the 3/0 and the 6/0, like these are the ones I use to catch the big daddy catfish using usually chicken liver, but you can also bunch up worms or corn or anything else, or you can tie it in a hair rig behind the circle hook. So that's part one. That's how I make my very simple, cheap and dirty little rig. The other thing I like about this is having this index card. Once I've tied on a rig, I just slip this back into the wallet. It serves two purposes. Firstly, it shows me, if I have a long fishing session, it shows me what I used and in what order. And when I get back to the shop, I can make another bunch of these rigs. Like if some of them were lost or if some of them need remaking, I have this as a pretty accurate little record. So the beauty of this system is how little it costs. If you buy multiples of everything, like a pack of 100 safety pins, a big bag of concrete or cement, this is mortar mix by the way, and your swivels and hooks obviously are bulk, and your leader and breakaway line are super cheap too. You only use about a foot per rig. So with these you can save a considerable amount of money, and that kind of makes you less restrained on the riverbank. You can launch numerous casts without worrying, oh, there goes $15, there goes $20, because you're casting out with an expensive pyramid sinker. And also your conscience is a bit clearer, knowing even when you pull in your rig and leave the concrete weight behind, that you're not really leaving behind anything with a big environmental impact. So I'm going to resume, if people like this video, I'm going to resume with another one, hopefully filmed at the riverbank, and I'm hoping to do that tomorrow morning early. The weather's been so hot and there's been so much boating activity on the river that I don't rate my chances very high this evening, but I'm willing to bet that I get at least one catfish tomorrow and possibly some smallmouth bass. So I'm going to take the opportunity to thank everybody who's still with me after what seems to be a pretty long video after all, and look forward to just showing you how I do my setup for catching catfish. Please like, and if you wish, subscribe, and obviously leave some comments. That there's always room for improvement. I've evolved this way, it works absolutely amazing for me, but you might have suggestions that can make it even better. And I don't have such a big ego that I can't accept constructive criticism. So thank you all again for watching. This has been Daniel, the Montreal Anglo Angler.